Hello and welcome back. I have taken a brief hiatus, as I'm sure you all have noticed, but I'm back now. And while I was gone, I was thinking a little bit about the future of this channel and everything. I've been thinking about certain improvements I want to make, and also just generally, I've been trying to figure out what I want to do with this channel, and just get some ideas for how to make some better content for you guys. Also, I've had a couple of interesting things happen that might bring a little bit more recognition to this channel, which is cool. But also, I got some advice from people who know more about YouTube and content creation than I do, um, about ways to make my channel a little bit better. So, just a quick hello and introduction for anyone who doesn't know me personally. I'm Caden. I am the host of this channel, and I'm 19 and from Wisconsin, and I'm really excited to be sharing some of my life with you guys. And I think that what I want to focus on in this channel is going to be more focused on the paranormal, my personal experiences with it, and some of these interesting paranormal artifacts that I have, in addition to maybe going to a couple of places where I've had experiences and seeing if anything happens. Um, and also, I think that uh, looking at horror movies that I enjoy and looking a little bit closer at some um, horror movies is something I also want to do here on this channel because I those are two things I enjoy greatly. So, what better way to kick off this more focused channel direction than telling one of my personal stories? Um, and this is something that happened to me about 2 years ago in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, which is close to where I'm from. Um, it was in a cemetery that I had gone with uh, my my friend at the time, who is now my girlfriend, and two of her friends. The four of us went to this cemetery together in Oshkosh, and we did a little bit of exploring. Now, we went around 7 o'clock, and it was in, I think, December, which means that it was dark already and it was pretty cold. So we were all dressed in coats and warmer clothes, and we took out this pair of dowsing rods. And dowsing rods, for those of you who don't know, are pairs of long rods, and usually they have usually they're made out of metal, and then at the base of the rod where it it's got one long stick and then it bends down, and where it bends down, there's usually some sort of handle or beads or something that allow the longer part of the rod to rotate freely. And the reason that it's set up like this is so that you can ask spirits questions and they can move the rods accordingly. Now, usually this works best with yes or no questions, because you have the spirits either cross the rods for a affirmative answer or pull the rods further away from each other for a negative answer. So we brought that and we were asking some questions. I was in charge of the rods first because I was the one who brought them, and I asked a couple of questions and I didn't really get too much of a response. Like the rods were moving, but it felt rather weak to my girlfriend. And she tried them, and the responses were also weak. And then we got around to one of her friends, and this friend of hers, she was holding the rods, and anytime she asked a question, the answer was very firm and very fast, and it just felt kind of weird that this whatever spirits were present were reacting so strongly for her when they had been very shy for the rest of us. Now, to perhaps better explain what I mean by like weak or very strong and fast, so you're supposed to hold both of the rods out approximately level with the ground so that they don't move on their own. Um, and then ask a question, and then the rods move on their own. And for those of you who may be skeptical, yes, this works. I've tried it myself, and even though I was pretty skeptical about it, it worked, and it's it's honestly quite incredible. Anyways, so when I was asking the questions and when my girlfriend was asking the questions, the rods would move, but they would move very, very slowly, and they might not even get all the way crossed or all the way apart from each other. Um, it was just a very slow answer, and it felt like the energy there was very weak. Um, but when this friend was asking the questions, it felt like the rod had been hit by a hand or something, because it would spin, and it would almost spin all the way around, and that's what I mean by it was strong and it was affirmative. Like it was very, very quick, and the force with which it was pulled or pushed um was really intense, and I gave it. And so naturally we did what any group of teens would do if there was a spirit and it seemed to be getting a little bit too attached to one of us. And we asked it if it was a good spirit or a bad spirit. It very quickly, very affirmatively said that it was a bad spirit. And so the four of us freaked out a little bit, and we put the rods away very quickly. Um, And then myself and the friend who had been holding the rods during this experience stayed together, and my girlfriend and one of her friends ended up going off into the cemetery because they wanted to do um some headstone rubbings, which is where like you put a piece of paper over the front of the headstone and then you rub it with like a crayon or a long piece of graphite or something, so that you can see what's on the headstone, especially if it's one that's worn away more, because those can be pretty hard to read if they're in bad shape. And now, while we were split up, I saw off in the cemetery there are plenty of larger headstones that stick up more, and then there are also lots of trees off in the cemetery, and it's spread out. It's not a huge cemetery, but it's also not a small one by any stretch of the imagination. I kept seeing these little flits and shadows out of the corners of my eyes, and it always seemed like they were near one of these trees or larger headstones, and I could never see it directly with my own eyes. I always saw it out of the corners of my eyes, but I never got to see it directly. And by it, I mean these shadows. Like, I would always see motion, but I wouldn't see what was causing the motion. I would just see something that looked like it dashed behind a headstone or behind a tree out of the corner of my eye, and then I'd look and then it'd be gone. But I could never see these shadows or whatever was causing this motion directly with my own eyes. It was always out of the corners of my eyes. And so this was starting to get me a little bit nervous because I kept seeing these motions out of the corners of my eyes, and that's not normal. And when you're a bunch of teens who are split up into smaller groups at night in the middle of a cemetery with no one else around, seeing anything can be a little bit freaky. And obviously, it's freaky because you're already freaked out because of the whole like paranormal side of things, or even if you don't believe in the paranormal, like you're in a yard full of dead people, and like that's a little bit weird. I mean, you don't normally just hang out in a graveyard at night, but also like if there's somebody else out there and they're watching you, they're probably not good news, and that's a freaky feeling. And also, if you're a bunch of high school students, like, it could be the cops. You don't know if you're gonna get in trouble because, like, we were good kids, but they don't necessarily know that. And so, who knows what could have happened if the cops showed up. And so, you're already on high alert, and these looks of motion going on around you and not being able to see it with your own eyes can get really, really frustrating. And it wasn't long after I noticed this that the freakier part of this story happened. And so we were still split up into two groups. Myself and the friend who I was still with, we were by the car, and the other two, as I already said, were off in the headstones. And we didn't lose sight of them, but they were pretty far off and kind of out of earshot, unless we yelled. But we were standing there, and then there's this large patch of woods that's off in the headstones. Um, from the direction of these woods, we heard this just awful, awful scream, and it was loud. It didn't sound human. It sounded enraged and also like somewhat in pain all at the same time. And it was short, but it didn't sound cut off, but it sounded so angry, and it really shook me up. And I looked at the friend who I was standing with and asked them if they heard it, and they were like, yeah. And I noticed that the couple of friends who were off in the headstones kind of perked their head up when this happened. And so we ran over to them and we asked them if they had heard it, and they both said that, yeah, they had heard it. And it didn't take us long to get to the consensus that we needed to get out of there. That was very, very terrifying. So we all piled into the car, and we tried to start up the GPS on my girlfriend's phone. She took out her phone and she was trying to get it up, and she pulled up the directions to our friend's house so that we could get out of there and start getting people home. But the GPS was acting really, really weird. Um, it it wasn't giving us the directions. Now, our friend's house was maybe like half a mile away from the cemetery, but the directions to get to her house kept going on and on and on, and the more you scrolled, the more directions there were, and it was basically telling us to keep going around in circles around the cemetery. It wasn't giving us an end destination, even though it was like half a mile away. Also, some of the like mechanics in the car were acting weird. I think the radio turned on by itself, which is really weird. So we did get out of there and we just had our friend tell us how to get to her house. Um, it wasn't very difficult, but you know, it was still freaky to have the GPS malfunction in the way that it was, and it seemed like something didn't want to let us leave. Now, the friend who these spirits seemed to get a little too attached to, um, she said that later that night, one of the plants that was like on her dresser or something ended up falling and breaking. The pot broke, and as far as I know, that was kind of the end of it. But still, it was definitely one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. Um, Not as terrifying as any of you who know about um, the story of when I saw a demon in real life. Um, I'd be more than happy to detail that in a future video, but some of you may already know what I'm talking about. So yeah, that's the story of my experience in the cemetery, and who knows, maybe in a future video I can go there and take a video from the cemetery and see if we can get any interaction. So yeah, that's my video for today. I hope you enjoyed the story. I hope that if you're new here, you like and you subscribe for more content in the future. I'm really excited to get home for the holidays because I think I'm going to make a lot of videos about my artifact collection, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, please go and watch the video titled My Views on the Paranormal, because that'll tell you a little bit about what I'm talking about. Um, and yeah, I've got a lot of exciting ideas for content in the near future, and I'm really excited to do it. I'm not sure when I'm gonna upload my next video, hopefully Thursday or Friday, but yeah, I'm excited to be back, and I hope you guys enjoy.